What's going on, everybody? Okay, before we get into this video, I thought I'd quickly do a pre-video on why I've actually kept this as a long podcast instead of a short one. I try and keep mine around 25 to 30 minutes, but once you start watching this, you'll know for a fact I couldn't shut Whisky Pete up, but I didn't want to because this man has so much love for what he does, and he's such an interesting guy that I just wanted to keep him going. I had to cut it at an hour mark because it was just going to get too long. But I want you to kind of watch as much of this as possible because Whisky Pete really resonates with me. He's gone and trying to do whiskey the way that he was told you had to do it. You know, the three-piece suit, the whiskey wanker kind of stuff, and the faking it till you're making it. And it didn't resonate with him. So he's gone back to his roots. He's a farm boy. That's why he loves his hat. And he's gone to who he is, and now he's just enjoying it. So, Whisky Pete, I just want to say thank you for being who you are because of me seeing who you were right at the start of this, I changed how I did my stuff, and I just didn't follow the crowd, and I didn't become the whiskey wanker. I think a lot of people think I'm a wanker, so bad, but more the fact that I just am me. I'm just trying to do me, and I just want to say a huge thank you for doing that. And guys, I hope you enjoy this podcast. As I said, it is a long one. Maybe cut it up in a couple of parts. I was deciding maybe keeping it one or putting it into two parts, but I've got some really exciting guests coming over the next couple of weeks, so I didn't have the time. Anyways, guys, enjoy the podcast. See ya. Welcome to episode 5 of WhiskZ Talks, where we speak all things whiskey from the people involved, from farm to mouth and everything in between. Today's guest is one of the most well-known, not just for his amazing hat, but for his knowledge on whiskey, cigars, and he's also hosting one of the world's first social distance whiskey events. Whisky Pete, thanks for joining us.
I told you I'd pop the bottle after you announced me. Hey, Zach, thanks for having me, man. It's nice to be here.
Mate, nice to meet you in this crazy world we're in at the moment.
Right? This is the first time I've actually spoken, like, voice to voice.
It certainly is. It is.
There's been a couple of texts back and forth, but it's nice to finally meet you and hear a voice to the name and a face and
enjoy a drink together.
Times, huh? And share a dram or 10.
So what is the first drinks that what's your current drink that you're enjoying the most at home?
Well, after the Corona period, basically everything that was on the back bar, evidently. But I did find there was a few more that I skewed to because it was less special occasion drinking. It was more like, 2 or 3 or 4 to get through those final emails I had to do of an evening or that kind of thing. It was a lot more of the daily drinker styles of whiskey than I would normally drink, I suppose. Like, there's a lot of interesting things that seem to arrive over my desk, which I'm always super grateful for. But because it was me having to buy my own whiskey and I wasn't running events and that kind of thing, I really got an a much deeper appreciation than I've had in a very long time for sort of that $50 to $85 price point. And I think it's been interesting because, like, when I started in whiskey, that's where you start talking about age statements. $50, you'd start talking about a 12-year-old whiskey, and slowly that's kind of evolving and changing. But I think it was really nice for me to delve back in the category, playing with age statement whiskies, but non-age statement whiskies as well, and just seeing the way that price point's evolving and changing for, the regular style of consumer, which I really enjoyed.
So one of the things that I
I'm drinking Woodford.
You drink Woodford? Yeah, I've got Bloodknock.
This is Woodford.
It's Bloodknock 17-year-old today, so it's my favourite.
Yeah, beautiful.
One of the things that when people start out in whiskey journey, they generally do sit in that $50 to $80 kind of ranges. And then they start seeing all these other people, and I'll be one of them, that's got this big collection behind them and stuff like that. And they start...
Yeah, look at that. That's impressive.
They have to start this high-end whiskies and stuff like that. And they put themselves in a position where they've got the fear of missing out, and they're trying to buy all this really expensive stuff. But you can actually get some really good bottles for under $100.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think, like, there's two sides to the coin, right? Like, I worked for, I think it was 98 different brands while I was gainfully employed, and I'd sell lots and lots of premium whiskey. But I think it's one thing to say you've tried all these amazing expensive whiskies, but if you're truly passionate about whiskey, would not the volume or breadth of experience be more important than the quality you've tried?
Yeah.
For example, if you're buying $200 to $500 bottles, say twice a month, which could fit in the budget if you wanted it to, as opposed to flirting around that $50 to $85 mark and picking up the volume so you get the greater breadth of experience, and then working out what it is you like about those subcategories, and then finding an expensive one that does it better.
Yeah.
I personally think, like, if someone was on their whiskey journey, I totally see the allure of jumping into the expensive stuff. I was exactly the same. The whiskey that made me fall in love with whiskey was Macallan. And we know how those price points went. and where the quality went, for that matter, but we don't need to delve down it. But I think tasting everything, both metaphorically and literally, if you've got a certain budget set aside and you're dumping it into really expensive bottles, if you're early on in your whiskey career, it's great to try expensive things, but until you appreciate what you like about some of those lower price point whiskeys, then how are you going to know what to pick in these more expensive whiskeys, or the expensive whiskeys to pick?
Yeah.
Because we've all had that horrible experience where we walk into Dan's or your local independent bottle shop. They don't know enough about it. You walk in, you drop $150, $200 on a bottle before you have the knowledge that you do now, and you ended up getting burnt with a bottle you fucking hate.
I've got many of them still in this shelf that I bought full.
I drank them.
Yeah, that's what I kind of liked about. How am I going to say this? Probably the only good thing about COVID that's kind of come out of it is the virtual tastings, where we've been able to find these people, and like the Blood Knock did theirs. We did the Chief Sons one. We've got
totally. How good's Chief Sons, by the way? I'm a massive advocate for Chief Sons. I think I've got them pegged winning awards in the next 2 to 5 for sure.
There you go.
Like, and not just domestic awards. I'd throw money on them winning awards in the next 5 years for sure, on a global scale.
Out of the 3, they've got the 900 standard, the Pete Sweet.
Pure. So yes, sweet. Sweet Pete, and then they do a pure, which it works off. It's a more flavoursome barley. I think it works off a I can't remember what sort of barley it is, but it's a more potent, more pungent barley.
It certainly is. So you're also not just into whiskey; you're into cigars. Is it something that you do often, or is it only when you're drinking whiskey?
I used to do it a lot more frequently. When I started Gentleman's Kettle, I was probably doing, I don't know, 3 or 4 a day. But now it's probably, realistically, it's probably 3 cigars on average a week, something like that. And quite often it is when I'm not drinking, but I do prefer the two together. I find the alkalinity of the tobacco and the mouthfeel it leaves seems to bring out the complexity and sweetness in any spirit that you drink, especially dark spirits. And cognac and whiskey and rum obviously go really, really well, and some of those aged tequilas as well. So I like them both by themselves, but it's like Bert and Ernie. They're better together.
Yeah. I haven't heard that for a
while. Not like Sonny and Cher.
So we've got a fair bit to talk about your whole journey. So I guess let's kind of start from the start. What was your first whiskey experience that you remember, and how's it grown?
Oh, yeah. First whiskey I ever tried was Lafroig 10 at the ripe old age of 14. Yeah, right.
That's
14 at a pub known as Molly Maguire's in Camden, which is now called Camden Hotel, if anyone knows it, which is where I grew up. And at 14, it wasn't an unfamiliar sight for a pile of 14-year-olds to sort of wander in and buy a couple of drinks. And all my mates would drink Jim Beam and Coke in a can. And that never really appealed to me. And we grew up on a farm, and it was pretty isolated. We didn't really get out a whole lot. And I grew up in a very religious family, as I'm sure you can probably tell. Cue canned laughter there. That'd be great.
Sorry.
There we go. Perfect. There we go. I just had to double check you're listening. But we grew up quite poor. Like, we were never hungry, but we never had anything luxurious or anything like that. But I was always intrigued by this idea of affordable luxury. So if my mates are drinking Jim Beam and Coke in a can, which I think this is pre-RTD tax, I think it was about $6, $6.50 a can. And for sort of 8 to 15 to 25, you could have a nip of this single malt stuff, which I knew nothing about, but I knew it was fancy. And I knew the bottles hadn't been opened and they were covered in that much dust that you could write the name on them on the back bar in this pub. And I was 14, I was working at KFC for $5.25 an hour. So when you jump into a single malt, it's 2 hours pay. I'm standing over a fryer and asking if you'd like fries with that. And so I jumped in and I tried a Lefroy 10. And as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty much the worst whiskey you can start with. There's a couple of others which might be a little tougher, but for a 14-year-old that can't even stomach an olive at the time, it's probably a little big. And I tried it and I forced my way through it, but I didn't enjoy it. And in that moment, I swore I'd never drink whiskey again. That was it. I was trying to work out who I wanted to be as a man, but unfortunately, my mother, my teetotaling mother, always told me to try things twice as a minimum. And so about 2.5 months later, after a Saturday shift at KFC Narellan, I went to the pub with my mates and I thought, if I'm going to do this one more time, I'm going to do it one last time and I'm going to try the best whiskey they possibly have, so I know whether I can take it off my radar or not, or whether I need to have it in my reality in the future. And so the most expensive whiskey they had was Macallan 18, which at the time ended up being about $120 a bottle wholesale, Macallan 18, because I worked for them afterwards. But per nip, it was $23, which was a lot of hours at KFC.
4 or 5 hours over your face.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like pimply with oil and stuff all over you. It was awesome and horrible at the same time. It taught me lots of things. But I bought that whiskey, this one last whiskey, and I brought it up to my lips and tasted it for the first time. And in that moment, it was like the clouds opened and the light beam shone down and the angels started singing with it. Oh! And I was very fortunate in a lot of ways, because at 14, I kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do. In that moment, second whiskey ever, hated the first one. I knew whiskey was what I wanted to do. Did I know I was going to work in it in the way that I do now? Fuck no. I was a kid from Camden. I couldn't have dreamed of all the things that I've done with whiskey and the things I continue to do. And that's not big noting myself. I just think it's more along the lines of when you love something and you really give a shit about it, fuck what anyone else says. Just go and grab it and do what you love doing. Like, you've got to do it forever. So, well, at least till you're, I don't know, 65 or infected with corona, one or the other. Short of lifespans these days. But I think at that point, it was really interesting. Like, you know, I tried a Macallan 18 and a Lefroy 10, and you couldn't find two whiskies at greater stark opposites, really. Like, you've got all those big phenolic, iodine-y, smoky notes coming out of the Lefroy, and then out of Macallan, the opposite side of Scotland, Meadows Coves, follow the River Spray, Esther Elkies, rather. And it's finished in sherry casks and bourbon, tall stills, light, delicious spirit. And what really intrigued me at the time was this. It's how can these two things taste so different and still be considered whiskey? Mm. And the way my mind works, mostly because of ADD, as it turns out, is if I'm not interested in something, I'll remember nothing about it. But if I'm interested in something, I will remember absolutely every fact and figure I've probably ever heard. Maybe autistic, but I don't think I'm that talented. But and it was the same week when we got the internet on the farm. And once the sun goes down at a farm, there's not a whole lot to do. So for the next 2 to 3 years, I'd spend probably 3 to 4 hours a night researching whiskey, every piece of content of whiskey that existed on the internet in 2000 evidently. fuck, that's a while ago. I consumed and I just dumped it into my head. So that was sort of where my journey began. I feel like I've been a little bit content heavy, so it's probably
No, not at all, man. Well, that's the whole thing, is to find out what your journey has been. So you've gone from the 14-year-old kid that's had the ashtray in your mouth to start off with, to then having this beautiful clean...
Oh no, I didn't start smoking until about 17.
I call Lafroig 10.
Oh, sorry, Lafroig. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I thought I was basing off the cigar chat we had previously. Because I was much later.
I don't do peated whiskey very well, so I kind of still at your 14-year-old stage with peated whiskeys with me. So
yeah, cool.
So what's kind of the journey?
We should talk about that too, because I could probably give you a couple of pointers if you feel like you'd want to work up to it.
We will. We'll jump after this. We'll have a bit of a chat about it. But I've had the Highland Park 12-year-old, which is just beautiful enough for me, and the Talisker 10 and the Talisker Storm, which is just enough to not be...
Yeah. If you like Taliskers, we have plenty to work with. I'll give you a shopping list.
Done.
You're going to love this.
So you've gone from being the 14-year-old kid on the internet that was looking at whiskey. Yeah. Every other 14-year-old kid was looking at something completely different at that time. But anyway,
I grew up in a religious household. We weren't allowed any of that, right? That's why it's so morally refined now.
Since you've been working in the actual industry, what's kind of been your gradual
where to start?
Where you are now?
To go? Yeah, cool. I'll try rush through this a bit. So from 14, got really interested. We were saying that at 16, the grey hair started to come through. So I would ride my bike to Campbelltown Station, which was like an hour ride, and jump on the train into town, and started going to whiskey events at about 16. The facial hair was there. I didn't have a beard, but I looked old for my age. So I started going to whiskey events and started schmoozing and working my way through. Got my first job in booze at 17. Lied on the resume and kind of got away with it. And only started telling people about it maybe, 4 or 5 years ago. So I started with Maxim, which was good fun. That was essentially the best booze company ever in the world. That was a mix of Beam Global, V&S, which is Absolute and Plymouth Gin, Absolute Vodka and Plymouth Gin. And what else do we have in the portfolio? Or Remy Contro, which was champagnes and Remy cognacs, and Edrington Group, which was the stuff I really cared about, which was Macallan, Highland Park, Ardmore. All those guys fell under that portfolio. Great booze company. That morphed into Coca-Cola. So I moved in their licensed division out west, calling on bottle shops, sort of out where I was from, up to Parramatta, out to Penrith, on-premise venues and stuff, bowling clubs, a lot of cultural clubs. Did that for a couple of years, then moved into town, into sort of a hybrid role between brand ambassador and rep. Left that and went to island Whiskey Galore as the whiskey specialist, launching all their brands. So brands like Glendronach, I brought Glendronach to Australia. Bunnahabhain, brought that to Australia. Balblair, Old Pulteney, Speyburn, Adelphi, Douglas Lang, independent bottlings. I think in total with that company, it was about 17 different brands that we brought into Australia. Deanston, Tobermory, Lechek, Kilhoman, that was me as well. So that was a really big step going from CCA into that. And Island to Island was hands down probably the best booze company I ever worked for. Great people, great, reasonably decent culture, and really good booze, and no one really appreciated it. And then I did a couple of other different roles. I did a national on-prem manager role, a couple other brand ambassador roles, did Diageo, did local craft spirits, which was West Winds Gin and Hellier's Road, and Trumpet Tequila and 666 Vodka, and Pernod Ricard, and then kind of realized that I really wasn't built to work for anyone else. And the only thing I liked about my job was drinking and smoking. So I figured, and teaching people about it. So I figured do more of that.
We'll get into what you do in a second, but you've worked with some special Australian whiskey companies before, and one bottle in particular, or actually 2 bottles in a pack in particular, that was on a ship. What was the story?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was fun.
I want to know the story behind that. How did it all start? What is it? You know, it just I've got one.
Let's do it.
Unopened.
Oh, awesome, man! You got one. Congratulations. I've got one here too, but it's very opened. It's got about 15% left in it. I can get it if you want me to. I think it's somewhere here. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Tucked behind here. You show me yours, and I'll show you mine.
There you go. No,
beautiful. Kidding. So mine are really open. So this is the that was on the one that was on the ship, and this is the control because is what it is. So you want to talk about that? We can talk about that.
Love to find out. Starward is one of my all-time favorite Australian brands.
Yours isn't opened, is it?
No.
Righto. Well, don't open it then, but I might drink some. Since we're here. Because, I think it's really important with whiskey, right? This is my theory. A lot of people buy bottles and they sit on them, and I used to do a lot of that as well. Obviously, Macallan was the whiskey that made me fall in love with whiskey, and I make no apologies for it. And I bought a heap of vintage stock and a lot of the 25 and 30-year-olds and 18-year-olds as they deleted them because I was working for the company. It's like insider trading, but with whiskey, which you can't be convicted for. And then sold them all. But here's my theory, right? If you're going to buy a bottle with the intention of flipping it or selling it, fine. Don't take the top off it. But if you're planning on keeping it for the rest of your life, then obviously oxidization is a thing. But if you're planning on keeping it for the rest of your life, would you not rather it was opened?
Oh, I agree.
Because you're going to keep it forever, right? If you're going to sell it as an investment, obviously look after it. But my theory was there is absolutely no way in my life I'm going to let these two bottles go. And I'm always going to have some whiskey in there. But if I'm going to own a bottle forever, which I will own both of these bottles forever, they're not going anywhere, then why not have them open and why not appreciate what it went into it? So
my idea of that is, and I've got a separate reason why I'm collecting and not opening stuff. So I've got a rule. I'll get 2 of each, open one, keep one. And one's going to be handed.
Nice. Did you get 2 of these?
No, not yet. So that's why I haven't opened it. I'm on the hunt.
Oh, right. Yeah. Good luck. Because, well, why don't we get into that, and then I'll tell you the story behind it.
Yeah, please, man.
And but they sold out in 13 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So I do a lot of consulting to hospo corporations or bigger companies. We do a lot of really collaborative work that I don't do a lot of promotion about because a lot of it happens behind the scenes and a lot of it's future stuff that's coming through. So Gentleman's Cabinet, my business, does whiskey and cigar events. That's what it's been up until this point, but was never the plan for that just to be what we do. But I do consulting to different groups and stuff, and one of which is Carnival Cruise Lines, which owns P&O, Cunard, Princess, Seabourn, and something else. And I did some consultancy and whacked, I think it was 6 whiskey bars on different Princess cruise liner ships. And we shot a heap of content with it, and we came up with a ranging for it. We converted a pile of old champagne bars into whiskey bars, and that went really well. And I was still on retainer, but I didn't really hear from them for 6 months. And then they called me up and they said, so good, I'm really pleased with that. And they called me up and said, hey, look, Pete, we're going to have a Cunard ship docking in Melbourne for 3 months in 2 years' time. And we're hoping to do it more annually. And this ship's going, what we want to do is take Cunard, which is a very traditionally English brand that actually owned the Titanic, but we're not allowed to talk about that. But I'm not on retainer anymore, so I can talk about it. In fact, anyway, and what they wanted to do was do something with Aussie. They wanted to do 3 Aussie things for the ship. They wanted to link in with the uniforms of the sailors, which they did. They linked in with RMs. They wanted to do something with performance, and I think they linked in with the South Australian Ballet or theatre company, something South Australian and theatre orientated. And then they wanted to do something with whiskey, and of course they called me. And they said, hey, look, we want to do something with Aussie whiskey. What do you think we should do? And I'd spotted the Jefferson's Ocean Reserve. I make no claim that I invented the idea of aging whiskey at sea, but I'd seen what Jefferson's Ocean Reserve were doing with this concept of they distill their bourbon, and I think they age it for a little bit in the US, and then it'd spend 2 years at sea, traveling around across the equator a few times through different humidities, different salinity levels of the air, and different levels of sodium that are soaking through the wood into the cask. But because of the strong temperature, humidity, climatic changes, these casks were overactive. And on top of that, they were also absorbing all these different complex salt notes from different seas in the world, because the salt or salinity level of a sea, wherever you are in the world, changes. The water in WA is much saltier than it is here on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And I'd seen what it had done to the bourbon, but I thought the concept could be taken like infinitely further, right? So I think they claim it crosses the equator 3 times or something. I think it sits on like a container ship and rolls around. But my thought was, okay, well, that's a bourbon, cool, like caramel, spice, toffees, all those kind of flavors. They go well with salt for sure. But here was my thought: what about if we take a barrel and we bolt it to the top deck of the ship, so it's like out and in amongst absolutely everything, like up on the bow, cop as much sea spray as possible, which obviously doesn't happen with Cunard ships very often, unless you're I'm not on retainer anymore, I can say that. Let's not just use a virgin American oak. Let's fiddle around with fortified wine, right? Because people talk about salted caramel all the time, but we know salt works conversely with a lot of sweet flavors. And we spoke to 2 different companies, one which is infinitely famous, but was based in Tasmania, and it really wasn't the right fit because the ship was going to be docked in Melbourne. And I called Dave Vitale, and I was like, Dave, I know you're a busy man, but I need like 2 hours in your calendar next week, because I've got a motherfucker of a deal I'm about to drop in your lap. And it took me a little while to get through, but we got it over the line, and we went down and kind of sold the concept. And the idea was, let's take 2 casks from the same batch, the same distillate, sister casks. Let's leave one in Melbourne. Let's bolt the other one to the top deck of the ship. We're going to age it on it for 12 months with a plaque. It's going to be a great PR thing. And then we're going to bring it back. We're going to bottle it. The first 8 bottles were auctioned off for charity, and I think they raised 40 grand. The first from 1 to 8. And then all the other bottles and all the other packs were sold in 13 minutes. And what was the retail on them? Was it $9.99?
I don't know. I bought this at this year's auction for Starwood. Actually had 2 left, and they did this.
Well, I appreciate you buying and supporting my shit, because this is the first whiskey concept that I saw from start to finish that I invented and got and was ever retailed. Like, I've done lots of independent bottling stuff for corporate clients, but this box is really special to me because this is the first one that like anyone took notice, and it disappeared.
Well, I didn't.
Sorry. So what did you pay for yours?
Obviously, as a consumer like myself and people watching this, they wouldn't have a clue that you were really behind it because your name isn't on there.
Well, exactly, and that's part of the reason I'm not on commission anymore. I'm not on retainer anymore. Basically, I came to them with the concept and everything and put them together with Starwood, and then someone very senior said, well, hold on, we're already together with Starwood. Why do we need him anymore?
Yeah.
And then they kind of cut me out partway through the deal. But the Starwood were very gracious in all of this. It had nothing to do with Starwood. It was all about Cunard trying to cut corners.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, that's what it is. That's big business, right?
I saw some video. I think it must have been on your YouTube, and you were I think you were tasting it or something like that. And I was like, made a comment on it. Then I realized you commented back, and I was like, hang on, I got to get this guy on the WhiskZ Talks, because if someone's
I know the clip you were talking about. I was in a really contemplative state
Wow.
and feeling really, really, really fortunate and like I had something to say, because like this box and these bottles is more than a couple of bottles of whiskey which was donated to me. It's much bigger than that. It's a culmination of this little kid from Camden's dream that, like, I came out and tried to pretend to be like every other whiskey ambassador, and I very unashamedly, I will tell you, I was tartan jackets, clean shaven, fucking polished shoes, all those kind of things, and trying to be what I thought everyone wanted me to be in whiskey. And what this symbolizes is so much in the same way as what this symbolizes. It's basically like you know what? Like the more comfortable you are with you and being you and doing you and chasing what you want to do, you can pull shit off. But if you told me at 18 I was going to have a box of whiskey like this with international notoriety, huge amount of PR that people, I've heard of these box sets going for like 5 to 8K, which is amazing, right? And this just came up with, you know, like a drunken idea. So this is a metaphor.
Isn't all good ideas drunken normally? So
a lot of them. You're going to see a few of them coming through over the next 6 months as well. So we'll see if they were good or not. I've been head down, bum up, trying to actualize some of these ideas, and that whiskey degustation is one of them.
Well, that's good. We'll get into that in a moment. But
yeah, I'm not rushing now.
What you just said then is exactly why I'm doing this series here, is because you've literally just spoken about how that bottle there to you is a memory of the little 14-year-old boy, no idea what he was going to be, and then, you know, doing something, and I'll say it, pretty fucking amazing, because I would love to have something like that, you know, that I would be behind. It's something to be proud of and kind of look back to. We just need to get you another pack so you get to keep one for yourself.
Well, hopefully in the future, if everything works out, I might be able to buy one with a bit of luck. But I just to go on from what you're saying, because I really appreciate your sincerity and the sentiment behind it. You've got to understand, like, this is a representation of struggle as well. Like, I come from a super religious family that absolutely condemn to the grave everything of what I do, but I believe in what I do, and I believe that what's in this box isn't about the liquid, it's about the connection and the way it brings people together. A bottle of whiskey is a bottle of emotion, right? And what's special about this, number one, it raised all that money for charity, which is great. And number two, it gets people thinking about premium whiskey, which is even better. But number three, the best bit, is it gets people sitting in a room together, sharing and talking and spending time together. And I love getting drunk, and I love whiskey, funnily enough. But what I love more than whiskey is fucking people. And the reason I went out and did it all on my own is to bring people together. And if I can teach enough around whiskey that people are comfortable enough to have those conversations with their friends or go buy a bottle and hand them a cigar, that's the real enrichment for me. I love whiskey. I make my money with whiskey, but like my fulfillment is about everything else that comes from whiskey.
I think a lot of people.
Like, I like that. I should throw that in more often.
I'll cut that little clip and send it to you.
I appreciate it.
With whiskey, I honestly believe there's a journey with whiskey for everybody. They start off, obviously, you know, the 14-year-old kid or whatever it is, sipping pre-mixes normally, and then move on.
I don't think many people have that same story.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
unless they're from Camden.
Yeah. But then when you really start to enjoy whiskey, and I'm talking like you're no longer mixing every single thing, and I've admitted this before, I was buying Yamazaki 12-year-old when I was 21 because I was in Japan all the time. I was mixing when I got home.
We've all been there. We've all been there. And it used to be $65 when I started Gentleman's Cabinet, which would have been 7.5 years ago. It's $65 a bottle, and you could barely give it away.
That's it. Exactly. So, and then now our journey is, and especially with my mates, is we're now able to sit down and enjoy, like we can still have a big night and get a little bit sloshed, but we're having conversations. We're talking about what we used to do when we were nightclubbing and ex-partners and like our car nights and all that kind of stuff, and really bringing the connection back with our mates that we've kind of lost over the last 5 years when we've all had kids and got married.
I love it. That's what you just said there. That's whiskey. That's actually whiskey. Don't worry about the liquid that tastes delicious. That is whiskey in the glass. But what you just said about mates catching up and spending time together because they have no other reason than whiskey.
That's it.
That's to me, that's what whiskey truly is. Like, it's a bottle of emotion, it's a bottle of connection. And it's this magic syrup that gives a reason for people to come together and connect. And the world's fucking crazy, not just now, but it has been ever since I've been born. And I think what's changed over, a couple of 100 years is people taking time out to actually really invest in friendship and relish each other's company and learn from. Like, now people have psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, all the other stuff, meds, which is just fucking crazy in itself, which not meds aren't crazy, but sometimes the application of meds in the volume that they're applied, just to clarify for everyone else, I'm all about it. But I think they're taking time out to invest in friendship. And this, since I started the business, that mantra, investing in friendship, taking time to invest in friendship, has just resounded with me. And I feel like Whisky and Cigars is not only a great medium for it, but it's a great fucking excuse. Because it's something that a 15-minute coffee will never replace. Like, when you sit down, throw down a bottle, whether you're handmade a cigar or not, it says more than here's the financial commitment, saying here's an hour, 2 hours, 10 hours of my time. Let's sit down and really connect, because nothing else is important in this moment. I don't need to drive anywhere. I don't want to answer the phone, even if she keeps calling, because I'm not meant to be here. But, it captures a moment, but it also frames up and sets a moment for when people can invest in friendship. But, my motivation and the reason Gentleman's Cabinet is called Gentleman's Cabinet, I don't know if I'm going too far ahead, but Gentleman's Cabinet is a double entendre, right? This is the whole idea from the beginning. It's a cabinet meeting of gentlemen, as in to represent events, a group of gentlemen coming together, and also the piece of furniture where you can stick your booze and cigars, which was meant to represent retail, which, it's coming. We'll talk about that in a bit, but we won't do that today.
Well, that's literally the way we were going to go then. We want to talk about your event, because obviously, and your business. We'll talk about the event.
Oh, well, let's not jump ahead yet. I've still got some real D&M shit, and then we'll do the plugs. What do you reckon?
All right. Give me a couple of seconds then, because I'm going to open
something. Why don't you grab something while I ramble?
I am going to open up the Starward Shard Cask.
Chardonnay cask Starward?
No, the charred red wine. So the Whiskey Club.
Oh, charred. I thought you said shard cask, like shardy. Oh, Toronto. It's like 4 litre box of unoaked shardy. So, like, Gentleman's Cabinet, I'm just going to take over and hijack your interview, because I feel like this is the right time. I'm meant to say this. Cut it, don't cut it, keep it or not. But Gentleman's Cabinet, the way it all eventuated, right? I went through this really interesting, tumultuous time. I was a kid from Camden, and if you're from the country, there's two types of people: the people that are really happy staying there, or the people that really want to get the hell out and prove that they're better than where they're from. I was more of the latter. I really wanted to get the hell out and prove I was better than where I was from. And I like to use I assume the word simile, but I could be wrong. After a couple of whiskeys, who knows? Or the comparison between, have you seen Lucifer, the TV show? And he's like suited up, owns a nightclub, drives an old Corvette Stingray from the 50s, like that kind of thing. That was my definition of success. And the longer I was away, and the longer I tried to morph and pretend and try to become the whiskey ambassador that I thought I needed to be in order to have a career in whiskey, the more I did that, the more helpless I felt, the more isolated I felt, and the more inauthentic I fucking felt. And a pile of things happened, and there was a couple of friends that, and myself that all went through breakups at a similar time. There was two mates and myself, and the other two were worse. They were basically divorced and fucked over and been robbed. And anyway, and it was really horrible situation. And we kind of started catching up 3, 4, 5, 7, 6 nights a week, give or take, and partying a lot and drinking a whole lot of whiskey. My mum would call it the Broken Hearts Club. And through those times and those moments, I saw the way that whiskey took 3 people from despair and gave them a reason to hang out and a reason to connect and a reason to talk. And even if we caught up and we didn't discuss what all the emotional stuff that was going on with them was, like, it gave us a reason to be in the same room and connect with your fellow man. And I've told this story a few times. I know we don't really have the time for it today, but we can do it another time, about how it literally saved one of my friends' lives. And then off the back of that, I was really conflicted with knowing that I loved whiskey and working for all these booze companies, where I kind of jumped through lots and lots of promotions and roles really quickly. But I was working for companies whose ethos I hated, people whose lack of passion for booze that I fucking hated. And I felt like I was doing something I was meant to love, but I fucking hated. And I realized, well, it wasn't actually my love for booze that was diluted. It was actually, kind of the corporate bullshit, or my own facade or perception of the person I was meant to be to do it. And then I bailed out.
The culture.
Exactly. Like there's an expectation, right? Imagine trying to be a whiskey ambassador with an accent like this. The rise of Aussie whiskey, I want to ride that, because the first time in my 17-year whiskey career, my accent's actually going to be fucking helpful. And it's not just the accent. Like I drink, and I'm a little bit outlandish and a little bit controversial, but I tried to adhere to what I thought would get further move me through my career, and try to be the person that I thought people wanted. And then I realized, you know what, if I'm trying to be something that I think other people want, then I'm totally going up the wrong tree. And then I started to regress back and just basically admit that I really like drinking. And I kind of, I grew up in the country. I wouldn't even talk about that before. And I'm a bit of a cowboy with the way I do things anyway. Not like, yes, I ride horses, and yes, I have cows and that kind of thing. But I mean more from like a gung-ho kind of attitude. I'm going to go get it. And I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks, because I'm just going to do it the way I like to do it. And so long as it's working, I'm really fucking comfortable with that.
So that to me sits really well, and why I kind of really, again, another reason why I want to get on you, because every single thing I've seen about you is just straight down the line. There's no bullshit about it. It is who you are. One of the things with me starting my whiskey reviews, and I've only been doing them realistically, like a lot of them in the past 2 months, is that...
And you've got some real traction. Like I've been on social media blackout, but I've heard your name lots of times, and that's why I'm here. Not just because anyone that's trying to build attention in whiskey or gives a shit about the category, I give a shit about.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's all been who I am. And I tried to, when I first started back in December or whatever it was, I tried to be like every other whiskey reviewer. I looked online. I literally would go, I'm going to do monkey shoulder today. So I would literally go and watch 5 monkey shoulder reviews, and then
and what were the best facts that they dropped throughout, and tasting notes, and how do I make it look authentic?
That's right. And I'd have the computer set up, and I'd have all that. Now I just don't even worry about it, because for me, it is being about real. Like my people that I'm focusing on is the real beginners. Like, I'm no expert in whiskey, but I'm a little bit further past the beginner stuff. But I'm being who I am. And that's also recently happened in my real estate game, where I've moved about 3 years ago. We had a family-owned business, real estate, for 10 years, and I was stuck being the person that I was supposed to be in real estate.
Oh yeah,
But
so that was working for your old man as well. So there's like that added layer of facade of, okay, well, I'm working under Dad's business. Will I ever be able to go out and pave my own way? Or is everyone just going to think that I'm the beneficiary of something that my dad's done? Whether or not I work hard, I'm a good person, or I actually fucking built the business under him because he gave me the opportunity. But there's always that overlay of like, who was it?
Yeah. And it was also, he was very good at what he does, but he was very old school with it. So the way we did things was old school. It wasn't until I was able to branch out by myself and be like, my partner at the time, you know, she's in real estate as well. And she's like, be who you're supposed to be who you are. And I now have fun with everything I do, because if you don't, you're lying to yourself and your clients. And I think one of the things that I resonate with you is that, yes, there we go.
Virtual high five. I'm so there with you, brother. That's been like my fucking 20-year journey.
Yep. People will realize that you're being a fake at some point, because you'll screw yourself over because you'll say something that you don't normally say, or they'll catch you.
It'd only be something fucking positive that I'd say.
That's it. They'll ask you one question.
Yeah, like they're looking for the opportunity where they think that you're being inauthentic. Like, oh, see, I told you, like, you know what I love? Like, because I wear the cowboy hat. I grew up on farms and beef farms, dairy farms. All my buddies were from farms and stuff like that. But I always love is like the question about like where they're trying to work out whether you have a reason to wear the hat or whether you're just a fuckwit from the city in the hat. It's the same thing. But I think the whole point behind it is it's not about where you're from or whether you've earned the fucking stripes because your parents decided to live on acreage and you got stuck out in the middle of nowhere with no fucking mates and just riding horses and dreaming about the future. Or does it actually represent a whole lot more than what it is about me? Like for me, the hat represents a combination of work ethic and looking out for your mates and not really giving a fuck what anyone thinks, whilst also justifying any of the drinking choices I like to make and feeling like a rock star when I walk into any bar, whether I know anyone there or not. Yeah. Because like for me, this is a symbol of obviously where I'm from. Like this particular hat, a friend made for me, and if you have a look at the band on it, it's actually an exact replica of my whip, which is cool. And then it's got the WP in the back. And then the new hat's even cooler. But for me, the hat is not just headwear. It's a symbol of me blowing off the past and trying to pretend that I'm something I'm not, because genuinely I'm just a roughhead from fucking Camden that likes being out in open spaces and really loves his mates and really loves drinking whiskey with the right fucking people that love it as much as he does. And that's it. Right? Like I don't need to impress anyone. I don't really give a shit anymore. And it was such a liberating thing leaving brands where I didn't have to be someone. And the only reason that all that was the expectation is morphed is because all the people that were more senior had to go through the same fucking process. And that's the way that they think life is. But everything, make no mistake, everything is about to change when it comes to marketing the world and how people's habits or consumption habits are formed. It's not about looking like the fanciest cunt or delivering the most sincere, factual numbers that a distillery tells you to talk about. What it's about now is just being real and delivering things in the way that's authentic to you. I care more about my people than I do about whiskey. And in fact, probably 30 or 40% of my staff have actually been attendees of events that have come up and demonstrated consistently that they were really fucking into it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hire you, not because you know what you're talking about, but because you believe in what I believe in. Yeah. And I can teach you all about whiskey. And so that's what's about to change.
Yeah. So for me, going to talking about how, like, you know, you stand in front of someone and it might be in a three-piece suit and he's just talking about facts about distillery and all that kind of stuff. I actually don't really care. I really enjoy.
Do I give a fuck how old your malting floor is? You
That's
can
right.
suck. I don't give a shit about your malting floor. Does your whiskey taste any good? Why does it taste good? And how do I talk about it to a friend?
Yep.
And if I like it, what else should I buy?
Yeah.
Teach me category knowledge, not your brand knowledge.
And entertain me while you're doing it. That's what I really enjoy. So talking about your event you've got coming up, you've got to give a bit of a plug out.
Oh, what a nice segue. I love it. Nailed it. Real estate. Right.
Social distance events in the world, because obviously the world is going crazy at the moment.
Yeah.
And how do we get the tickets?
Great. Let's do it. So what we're doing, it's August 8th. It's the Sydney Hidden Whisky Degustation. And the Sydney Hidden Whisky Degustation is it's an idea which I've had for about 4 years of trying to reinvent what whiskey shows are. We've all been to the whiskey shows where there's heaps of Bunnings tables around the corner of a conference room, and it's great in order to get lots of people there that are enthusiastic about whiskey. But I think there's a couple of opportunities there. One, and I'm guilty of it as well, is walking in, drinking lots and lots of whiskey and then getting the hell out of there and not buying anything, which is fine if you don't buy anything, but you also don't remember anything you learn. So the idea of it is we're doing 15 10-minute masterclasses. Currently, we're doing 8 people per group, and depending on what happens with COVID, whether we need to go down in numbers or up in, or whether I think currently we could do up to, in the space we have, up to 15 people per room, but we've capped it at 8 people per room. For now, we may blow it out a little bit if everything goes well, but you know, after today, who knows? 15 10-minute masterclasses, and 5 courses of food throughout the day from celebrity chef Simon Eckes. We co-wrote the menu. It's going to be unreal. So it's basically every 4th room is a food room. Lots of water and stuff throughout. We're going to have a shop on the day with discounted pricing. But the idea is to really give you some time with the people that know whiskey. Yeah. Now, I'm sure you've been to whiskey shows before. It's lots of the Scottish, or the employees of the companies that distribute Scottish whiskies and that kind of thing. At last count, I was just looking for my phone, then I realized it's up here because I was going to bring up the list. I think at last count, we're looking at 10 or 11 Aussie suppliers for this show, of 15. So it's a massive focus on local producers, local distillers, drink local, think local, support local. We've got some Irish, we've got some Scottish, we've got some Japanese and some American there, because we need to have it to tell the story of whiskey. But everything else is focused on teaching you from paddock to bottle, or from dirt to drink, or paddock to plate, depending on what you're into.
Well, as I say, the tagline of this, the Whiskey Talks, is talking to everyone from farm to mouth. So that's exactly what you're doing.
Farm to mouth. I like, Peter Bignell told me about dirt to drink, and I kind of like that. Dirt to drink, from the dirt to drinking. So we've got, Stu from Voyager, Stu Wycroft from Voyager Craft Malts. He's going to be bringing a pile of different barley specimens and talking to us about how barley is grown, and the climatic conditions that work with it, what makes good barley, bad barley, how shit rainfall can fuck barley up very, very easily, and protein contents. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he's signed on, but with everything that's happening in Victoria, but hopefully we have Robbie Tucknott from Victoria Barrel Brokers, and he'll be talking about how casks affect the whiskey, because my theory was there was 3 shortfalls with whiskey shows. Everyone goes and gets drunk and leaves too early and remembers nothing. Shortfall number 1. Now, number 2, you don't get to spend enough time with the people that actually create it. Yeah. It's great to have a brand ambassador there, and I'm not detracting from brand ambassadors' capability. I know some amazing brand ambassadors, and I've known some mediocre ones as well. But I think meeting the people that actually make it, have the passion, and not only that, have the vested interest because they own the fucking thing. Mm. That's this is the first time something like this could ever happen in Australia. Aussie whiskey distilleries haven't had the volume to participate in whiskey shows since 2012, really. And we've gone and we've bought 9 or 10 Aussie suppliers and distillers in whiskey. We have distillers there, we have distributors there, talking like hand to mouth and really exposing and blowing up the amazing things that are happening in Australian whiskey, because it is all happening in here. We have a loose enough legislative system when it comes to whiskey. People are experimenting and doing amazing things. But I feel like as a smaller producer and supplier, they haven't had the opportunity to go out and tell the world about it because they're too busy trying to make enough barrels and fund those barrels to keep enough volume aging as they go along. And I feel a personal responsibility as someone that identifies with an accent like this as incredibly Australian to, take the following that I have and the experience that I have from working for international brands and applying that and using it to help local Aussie suppliers that are really battling it out and trying to build an industry and trying to build a future. And I think it's just really important to be talking about what's happening locally.
Yeah. So if anyone that's wanting to have a look, I saw a video on your page that said that was the actual event.
Oh yeah. So there's been some the videos and stuff like that around. If you want to check out the event, I think it's Visions in Style / Hidden Whiskey, but it's called the Hidden Whiskey Degustation. Type it into Google, or there's a link in my bio. Oh yeah, you can do that.
I'll put a link in.
And we're also we're doing, I was going to invite you, but I knew coming down from Queensland was pretty unlikely, but we're doing the media launch tomorrow evening. We're going to do a live stream from approximately 7 p.m. We're going to announce all the brands. We're going to have a few of the brands there running a mini whiskey masterclass and talking about what their ethos is and the future of Australian whiskey. And to be honest, I'm just really excited that I've managed to get all the legends that I've known in whiskey for such a long time to all come together in this 200 meter, 160-year-old coal tunnel. It's going to be filled with bars, hanging out. It's just going to be unreal. And hopefully we get to do them again in the future.
It's a cool place, man. I showed my partner before when you were walking through and introducing people the old stone rooms and stuff like that. So
I think it's 180 years old, and some of it's convict hand cut stone. And
wow,
yeah, it's cool.
So anyone that's looking to go to one of the first whiskey events that's actually available for us to actually go, we'll go to the link down there, mate. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been amazing. We're gonna have to get you back on and actually do just like specific conversations about one topic. I think we could talk all night. I can definitely talk all night, all year, and I just kind of love talking about what I love doing. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and to be able to talk with you and finally meet you face to face, because I've been hearing lots of things around the traps, but it's just nice to see you. I hope everything's going well in Queensland. And I can't wait till we share a dream face to face in the future. Might be sooner than you think, mate. So we'll raise this.
You never know.
That's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Cheers, boys and girls. Thanks for having me.